Hi friends, this is Annette of AnnetteLeonard.com, back with an episode of Chronic Wellness. Today I'm continuing our conversation about the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA, which recently celebrated its 30th anniversary, which makes me old because I remember when it passed and what a tremendous celebration for the rights of people with disabilities who in the history of our world have been oppressed, disenfranchised, killed for who they are and how they have shown up. And for many years, I volunteered with an organization called MIUSA, Mobility International USA. I will put their link in the show notes. And among many things that MIUSA does, they bring together organizers and activists with disabilities from around the globe to learn how to further and advance the rights of disabilities in their own countries. They bring them places, sometimes to the US, not always, to skill them up in how to advocate, find funds, write policy, lobby their legislators, all kinds of things in order to get legislation passed in many nations to transform the rights of disabilities across the world. And since 2000, at least 181 countries have since passed legislation that mirrors the ADA in their countries. And that is an astonishing and remarkable fact. And from working with MIUSA and these grassroots organizers from other countries, I've learned a number of things about the ADA, things we did right, things we could have done better. And one of the things that I'll highlight today that we did right was that the ADA came to be because of broad-based coalition, grassroots organizing across disability. And looking at how people had been left out of previous civil rights movements, the disability community said, you know what? We're not going to do it that way. So whereas the LGBTQ movement had left out the rights of trans folks when they were first advocating for change, disability movement said, we're not going to do that. And whereas the women's movement had left out lesbians in their initial fight for change, the disability rights movement said, we're not going to do that. And so when at the final push, when the ADA was in its home stretch, and restaurant and bars and food service industry was lobbying Congress to say, do not make us hire people who we perceive to be HIV positive or people with AIDS. Like, take that off the table. We should not have to hire food service workers that we think are HIV positive or have AIDS. Disability rights groups said, you know what? We're not going to leave them out. If they don't get in, none of us do. We go together or we do not go at all. And I have to tell you, I am floored. I'm floored by that courage. It could have meant the difference between losing the fight for this law or not. I mean, it could have meant that we lost it all to say we all go together. And yet that was what we did. That was what they did. I'm just amazed and heartened, especially now when I feel like we can hardly walk across the street to bridge divides, much less walk across the aisles of Congress. And that our forebearers, that the people who went before us to make this legislation possible, said no. If we don't all get in, then none of us do. Moves me deeply. And it calls me to be a better version of myself. I didn't expect this. So that is my transformative moment. That is my news today about what we did right. And I hope it moves you too and helps you think about, what can I do today to include somebody I might not have included? And maybe that somebody's myself, because we're often hardest on ourselves. And maybe that somebody is my neighbor or somebody that I perceive to be really different from me. And what a lesson we can all learn from the ADA and who we chose to include. As ever, folks, I am honored by your participation and spending a little time and energy with me. If you haven't subscribed, if you haven't left me a comment or a question, I am desperate to hear from you and grateful for your subscription. Just hit that button and you'll get to hear from me. Turn on your notifications. And until we're together again, be well.